Welcome to the Ministry Company Podcast. You're listening to Pastor Mike Hepburn from the Ministry Company Church in London, Ontario, Canada. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Ministry Company.
Nehemiah chapter 5. I'm going to just go from verse 14 to 19. And this portion is talking about Nehemiah. In my version, it's the heading for it is Nehemiah's generosity. But it really just talks about Nehemiah's leadership and how he's handling being put in a place of leadership and authority. So starting in verse 14, it says, "Moreover, from the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd year of Xerxes the king, 12 years, neither I nor my brothers ate the food allowance of the governor. The former governors who were before me laid heavy burdens on the people and took from them for their daily ration 40 shekels of silver. Even their servants lorded it over the people, but I did not do so because of the fear of God. I also persevered in the work on this wall, and we acquired no land, and my servants were gathered there for the work. Moreover, there were at my table 150 men, Jews and officials, besides those who came to us from the nations that were around us. Now what was prepared at my expense for each day was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep and birds, and every 10 days all kinds of wine in abundance. Yet for all this I did not demand the food allowance of the governor, because the service was too heavy on this people. Remember for my good, O my God, all that I have done for this people." And so talking on this today, I just kind of titled it Handling Promotion. And we're talking about how Nehemiah handled being put in that place. He talked about how he kind of compared himself to previous governors and how they put heavy burdens on the people. And a quote by a scholar named Thomas Carlyle is that adversity is sometimes hard upon a man. And that basically means to get into tough situations. We have struggles. And then it says, "But for one man who can stand prosperity, there are 100 who will stand adversity." And what he basically means by that is that it's a lot of times we find the strength when we go through hard times, but a lot of people actually go to a place where they're prosperous, and that's where they fall because the things that can creep in, like pride or detachment from other people, come in times of promotion. So with promotion comes the potential for, I've got a list here, pride, I already said, temptation, pressure, distraction, and detachment. And these are all things that can come in different places. And really, it can be easier to handle or survive a demotion or a critique with integrity than it is with a promotion, because promotions, again, when people tell us the good things that we're doing, when they put us in a place of leadership or authority, it's easy for these things to rise up. So when he first started talking about himself there, he'd said how neither I nor my brothers ate the food allowance of the governor. And basically what he was saying is that was a temptation, because that was what the previous governors had done, and he could have come into that situation and just followed suit, and that was that temptation. But he recognized that a wise leader uses the privileges that are given to them, but they don't abuse them at the expense of other people. That when you're in a place of promotion or a place of privilege, you have opportunities, but that you don't use those opportunities at the expense of other people. You use those opportunities and those promotions to lift other people up and to encourage other people. And in any leadership promotion, there's that opportunity, because a lot of times they do come with things like access to maybe different, even as if thinking as a business leader, access to different accounts or to other employees, to having people working underneath you that you could abuse the work that they're offering to do for you. And so it's important to have, when temptation comes, that integrity and to not do things that aren't right. In verse 15, it said how the former governors who were before me laid heavy burdens on the people and took their daily ration of 40 shekels, and how the servants even lorded it over the people. And that's showing where promotion brings comparison and brings pressure. So we know even the officials that were around Jerusalem at this time, they were looking to Nehemiah to continue those things because they benefited from that as well. So there was that external pressure from the officials, from the noblemen to continue those practices because that was the comparison coming from previous rulers, previous leaders. So in our sense, this could be if you get a promotion at work or you get new responsibilities at work, there can be that pressure to do the same things that the people before you were doing, to keep the same policies in place. But as you go into that, knowing maybe that those weren't the best policies, or there's a better way or a different way that more suits your leadership style, to not give into that pressure just to please people because this is the way it's always been done, or this is the way they like it done. When you're put in that place of leadership, it's for a reason, and you have that opportunity to rise above that pressure and to do what you know is best. In verse 16, it talked about how even in all this, he'd never stopped persevering on that work on the wall, and about how he wasn't concerned about acquiring land or doing anything other than the wall. He had come specifically for the purpose of building the wall, and he wasn't going to get distracted from that. And we can see for us that promotions involve projects. And again, when we're in a place of leadership or a place of responsibility, we have projects, or we have, again, responsibilities, and it's easy to get distracted from those, to have situations around us to become a distraction. But Nehemiah, in his good example of leadership, he stayed on task with building the wall. And he used that task and that ability to bring in these servants, and to, again, he goes in the next verse where there's 150 people of Jerusalem that eat at his table every day. He used that privilege and that promotion for hospitality for the cause. These people that were coming into the city to help, he was looking after them. He was making sure that they were being fed. And in that, he wasn't using that as a distraction. He was making sure it was done, but his ultimate focus was on the wall. And then verse 18, how he'd said that now is at my expense for each day was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep and birds, and every 10 days all kinds of wine in abundance. Yet for all this I did not demand the food allowance of the governor, because the service was too heavy on this people. And what could have happened there was a detachment from the people, where he had these things going on. He was focused on the wall, and he could have become detached and just so focused on that he forgot about the people that were gathering to help him. And we as people who have responsibility, or leaders, can have that opportunity to be so focused on what we're supposed to be doing that we lose track of the people around us that are looking to us for leadership or for example. So we don't want to be so focused on the objective that we run over our workers, that we cause them to feel like they're getting left behind or taken advantage of. So Nehemiah, he kept the people in focus. And it says, the man who is impatient with weakness will be defective in leadership. So in the case of Nehemiah, we'd seen in previous chapters, sometimes the workers got tired, sometimes the workers got discouraged, and he didn't become impatient with them and let them lose their focus. He kept encouraging them and setting them set up in the right direction. One quote by J. Oswald Sanders says, if we run too far ahead, we lose our power to influence. So even in the case of, for me, for running races, sometimes there's somebody at the very start of the race. In a half marathon, there's somebody on a bike, and the person on the bike stays at the front so that whoever's running behind them knows which path to take, where to turn. If that person gets too far ahead of the runners, then the runners can lose track of where they're supposed to be running, where their race is supposed to be going. And so, when we're in a place of leadership over somebody else, or a place of responsibility, we have to have that mindset that the people that are coming behind us or who are following us need to be able to see us and see where we're going and not lose track of us. So that's in that specific chunk of Nehemiah chapter 5, just what I saw of just good characteristics that Nehemiah had of, not letting pride or temptation come in, not letting the pressure of the people from previous experiences distract him, not getting distracted from his task, even when all the other stuff was happening around him. And always keeping that attachment to the people, not losing that sense of their importance in that he was building the city for God, but ultimately also for the people of God, the people of Jerusalem, so that they had a place to live and a place to worship the Lord. I'm going to hop quick into chapter 6. It's a really quick lesson here, but I'm gonna read all of chapter 6 real quick. It says, "Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, 'Come, and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono,' but they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them, saying, 'I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you?' And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner." I'll stop there real quick. This chapter, Nehemiah and his workers, they're so close to being done that task of building the wall. And it's like you can see the finish line. The walls are up. They just need to work on the gates. They need to get the last few little details done. And it's that sense of, again, as a runner, it's like you can see the finish line. You can see you're almost done. And there's that opportunity at that point to falter or to lose sight of what you're doing. A quote from Charles Swindoll is, "So often the most vulnerable one isn't the one who stumbles, but the one who thinks he is incapable of falling." And it can be that point where you're so close to the end, you think this is going to happen because we're already right there. We can see the end goal. And what Nehemiah saw here in this first chunk of the chapter was the polite invitation, is what I'll call it. These men who in previous chapters had been ridiculing him or telling him that he was going against God's will, or that he was, he had ulterior motives, that he was a dishonest man. Now these men were politely inviting him to come meet him. And Nehemiah had the discernment. He knew that their motives weren't right, that these men just hadn't suddenly changed their minds and now were looking to actually have positive interactions with him. And he wasn't going to be their puppet. He wasn't going to just bow to that request to leave the work that he was almost done to go meet with them. And one thing we can learn from that is that we can learn to say no without an explanation. When we know somebody's motives aren't right, when we know somebody isn't looking out for our best interest. For me, this is a hard one. I like to, if you're talking about love languages, there's the 5 love languages. Mine's acts of service. So I love to do things for people. That's how I show my love. So if somebody asks me to do something, my inclination is always to say yes. And for me to learn to say no is hard, but again, we have that opportunity to grow in areas, and I've learned to say no, and I don't have to say why I'm saying no. We've had discussions with family about this as well. It's like as children get older, and there's boundaries of, your children are having children, and you have that intricacy of being able or being required to say no in circumstances to maybe your adult children where you no longer can do the things for them that you could do as a child. And now that they're out of the house, you need to be able to say no and not give an explanation, not give them a reason why, and have them understand that it can just be because that's not right for that situation. So that's what Nehemiah did, and he was persistent about it. They came back 4 times requesting politely, and each time he said, "No, I'm busy doing what I know I'm supposed to be here doing." And then I'll pick it back up in verse 5. It says, "In the same way, Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. And it was written, 'It is reported among the nations,' and Geshem also says it, 'that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah, and now the king will hear of these reports. So now, come and let us take counsel together.' Then I sent to him saying," so now Nehemiah's responding, "No such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking, their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. So now we've gone from the polite invitation, where they're saying, Nehemiah, just come meet with us. We'd like to have a conversation with you. And now they've sent an open letter that's read to everybody that's within hearing distance. It's for everyone to hear. And its purpose is purely for intimidation. It's spreading rumors, half-truths, trying to paint Nehemiah in a negative light. And rumors, so this is what this is. They have two distinct characteristics. And the first one for a rumor is that a source is never declared. There's never an origin of where this rumor's come from. A lot of times people have vague statements like, I have it on credible sources, or I've heard this from a credible source. I've heard this from somebody who's reliable, but they're not willing to say who. And one way to quickly dispel a rumor is when somebody is talking to you and you know what they're saying isn't something they should be saying, or that it's not truth. There's a really quick phrase of, can I quote you on that? Can I tell other people that you told me this? And if it's a rumor, the answer is always going to be, oh, no, you can't quote me on that. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about what I'm saying is true. So that's for that, where a source isn't declared. That's kind of the trick we can use, or the strategy is to say, can I quote you on this? Can I label you as the origin of where I heard this from? And second thing for a rumor is that it always involves either exaggerations or just complete inaccuracies. A good example of that is the game we've probably all played at some point. Some people call it gossip, some people call it telephone, where you form a line of people and the first person gets a phrase said to them, and then they have to tell it whispered in the ear of the entire person down. So first person whispers it to the second person whispers it to the third person. By the time you get to the 10th person, it's usually pretty hilarious to hear what they have to say, what the original person said, because it's almost never right. It's something that's completely twisted. Somebody's changed a word along the way, and as that word changed, the meaning changed, so somebody else changed a word. And it's interesting to see how over the course of 10 people in the span of less than a minute, something that was a true statement could change to something completely different. And that's how rumors work too. There's inaccuracies, people exaggerate their points. And so when somebody comes to you with something like that, what we can do is we can discern by asking ourselves some questions. Firstly, we can ask, is it necessary to say? Is this something that is even necessary for me to tell anybody else, or can it just end here? I've heard it. It doesn't have any meaning to me. It's just going to stop here. And maybe it is something necessary. Maybe it does bring some concerning things to mind. So then we can ask, is it confidential information? Am I betraying somebody's trust by telling this to anybody else? Is it something that somebody doesn't want out in the open? Another thing we can ask is it true, or do I know that it's true? It might be true, but do I know that it's true 100%? And if it's not true, or if we're not sure if it's true, we know it's something that we shouldn't be passing on to other people. And fourth, do I have a right to pass it on? So it might be true, it might be something that's necessary to know, but it might not be something that I have the right to say to anybody else. There are lots of professions that deal with stuff like this. There would be, as a lawyer, they would be hearing information that, is true information, is confidential, is very necessary, but it's not their right to share it with anybody else outside of the court of law. There's the doctor-patient confidentiality, where you can go to the doctor and share very personal information, and they don't have a right to share that with anybody else, even if it's true, even if it's information they need to know. It could be something that, for other people to find out about, whether it's a diagnosis or something like that. They don't have a right to share that outside of your permission, right? And so even as something like this comes as truth, there's still rules and guidelines we can follow to protect ourselves and protect the people that are being talked about or being shared about. One thing Pastor Heather, when Pastor Heather and Pastor Jamie were here, was always really good about, I believe it was positive down, negative up, right? So if you had something positive to say, you could say it to anybody. But if you had something negative to say, you had to take it to the source. If I had something negative to say about Pastor Pablo, I shouldn't be saying it to Jack or Carlos. I should be going to Pastor Pablo and saying what I have to say. But if I have something nice to say about Pastor Pablo, I have absolutely every right to tell Jack and tell Carlos to say, Pastor Pablo's a great guy. Here's what he's done. Here's what he's doing. Here's some great things about him. So just having the mindset of where the right information should be going based on what it is. Where did I leave off? So Nehemiah 6, verse 10. And this is, it says, "Now when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of I don't know that name, Deliah, son of Mehathabel, who was confined to his home, he said, 'Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night.' But I said, 'Should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I should go into the temple and live? I will not go in.' And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin. And so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me." And then verse 14, "Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid." So it went from this polite invitation to an open letter, and then when that still didn't work, to cause Nehemiah to be distracted or to cease the work on the wall, they went to a more devious plot of hiring somebody to basically implant fear or instill fear into Nehemiah. Just kind of like that idea of Nehemiah, they're going to kill you. You need to run for your life. This is life or death. This is the next level of intimidation. And in verse 11 and verse 12, we can see, again, that discernment, or I believe some versions say that Nehemiah says, "I perceived that this is what the truth is," that he wasn't being honest, that this person who was trying to cause me to go into the temple with him was trying to get Nehemiah to sin. He was trying to get Nehemiah to go to a place he shouldn't be when he shouldn't be there, purely for the fact so that it could be something that they could slander Nehemiah with, that they could say, look at your leader. He was hiding in the temple afraid because he's not the leader that he says he is. And so Nehemiah, again, he recognized this. And I love how in all three of these circumstances, when there's the open letter, when there's the invitation, and when there's this perceived fear, he always takes it to God. He always ends that section in a prayer. It says, "Oh my God, this is what I would like you to do in this circumstance for me." And it's always to bring the glory to God, to understand that it's his relationship with the Lord that allows him to discern these circumstances, that it's walking with God that keeps us in that place where we understand the motives behind other people's actions. And so right after that, I'll read the rest of chapter 6, verse 15. "So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Elul in 52 days. And when our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Moreover, in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them. For many in Judah were bound by oath to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Arah, and his son Jehonahan had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, as his wife. Also they spoke of his good deeds in my presence and reported my words to him. And Tobiah sent letters to make me afraid." So here we see Nehemiah finally comes to the completion of this task. And without actually physically going to Jerusalem and seeing the size of the area that they were building this wall around, repairing this wall around, I don't think we can fully grasp the immensity of that task that they accomplished in 52 days. And it was to bring glory to God, to show that apart from his sovereignty and his sending and commissioning them to do that, it would never have gotten done. And God placed Nehemiah in the right place in the right time in the right attitude to do these things, where he wouldn't get distracted, where he used these really solid leadership principles and guidelines to lead that nation of Judah, the people of Judah in Jerusalem, to do this task. And when it's accomplished, again, as you see the enemies that have been taunting him, that have been attacking him, it says that they fell in their esteem, that they realized that they'd been fighting against God, not Nehemiah, that they understood that God was with Nehemiah and he was with the people of Jerusalem. And it's interesting, and it's so joyful to see when God puts you in a place to do something and you stay close to him and you stay in communication with him, as Nehemiah was all the way through the first 6 chapters, always going back to God and praying to him, being in communion with him, that the Lord walked him through so many different challenges and circumstances, but at the end it comes to completion and you see this wall rebuilt.
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Ministry Company, or join us in person at 1541 Fanshawe Park Road East, London, Ontario, on Sundays at 12:30 p.m. or Wednesday nights for prayer at 7 p.m.